Hello, everybody. And thank you for still staying around to listen to us. We are really excited to be here because finally, after a year, we get to tell you about the past, the present, and a little bit about the future of Fedimint and Fedi. Now, my name is Obi, and I am the CEO and one of the co-founders of Fedi. And I'm going to be telling you about what's happened over the last year with Fedimint and Fedi and the evolution over that period. And then I'm going to hand you over to one of my other co-founders, Justin Moon, also known as the nicest guy in Bitcoin, by the way, to take you through the meat of the presentation. But let's get started. So it was actually a year ago on this stage, on the open source stage. I'm not sure if it's the same room.
Downstairs.
It was downstairs, yeah. The open source stage, we were the last two talks for the open source stage at Bitcoin 2022 Miami. And it was myself and Eric Syrian, who is the last co-founder of Fedi and also the inventor of the Fedimint protocol. And we had two talks in a row where we introduced Fedimint to the greater public.
There was actually one more person there.
Yeah, there was.
Casey from Ordinals.
So on Eric's talk, there was Casey and Ordinals. I did an initial talk explaining that at global scale, with billions of users, it just stands to reason that on-chain fees were going to be very high, and so you need a way to scale beyond Lightning to also a level beyond that. And then Eric and Casey went and discussed that with Aaron Van Wirdum in detail even further. Little did we know that Casey would help provide an insight of what the future will be like when we have billions of users. So that's an interesting irony, because at the time he was saying he was working on his art project where he was going to sort of enumerate every single Satoshi, and we thought, well, it's interesting. Anyway. That's an aside. It's an aside, and it's quite ironic. But, so, at that point, before that point, only a few sort of insiders knew about the Fedimint protocol. It was an incredibly exciting protocol. I was excited about it, because I was fortunate enough to have met Eric at Hackers Congress in Prague just a few months earlier. But no one else did. But it's fair to say that that changed that day, because a few things happened. First, we saw this incredible inpouring of interest from communities and companies and organizations from around the world who were interested in this idea of federations and communities taking control. They felt and they communicated that it's really solved, it was a missing piece for them in solving their problems of getting this into communities from the global south or regions living under the yoke of authoritarian regimes. We had Steve Lee and Connor and Spiral came up to us directly after and said, look, okay, I get this idea. We will support the open source community. And they have now helped fund a number of Fedimint core contributors. Human Rights Foundation did the same. They not only supported Fedimint core contributors, but they also flew me to Oslo, where we met some of the most inspiring human rights defenders, activists, and NGOs fighting for the rights of people living under the yoke of authoritarian regimes and dictatorships from around the world. And again, they're not Bitcoiners. They're not necessarily technical, but they have a problem, and they realize this solves their problem. And that's where we want to get to, just solving people's problems. And it just so happens that Bitcoin and Lightning and Fedimint and everything we are going to build on it does. Now, and beyond that, we had support already from 1031, Einen Zwanzig, and also Blockstream, who were one of the first ever supporters. And they're the first to see the potential of the Fedimint protocol, more than a year before anyone else. Obviously not before Eric, because he invented it. So, but it was not just that. We also got incredible support from you guys, from builders, from contributors. Now, as you can see, before a certain period of time, there was a trickle of support, a few really passionate
Really
people.
one.
Well, it was really one.
It was one.
Yeah, 1.5. And then something happened, Bitcoin 2022. And as you can see from there, Even after the talk, we had people come up to us, approach us, and said they wanted to support. They understood the idea, and they started supporting. And it's continued all the way through to today, where we have over 50 contributors. We're going to go into this in more detail later. 50 contributors working on the Fedimint protocol. And this is one of the most active projects in the Bitcoin ecosystem. But it didn't stop there as well. We also had incredible support from the Bitcoin VC space. So since the last year, just under a year since we launched Fedi, the company, we've had 2 rounds of funding, one immediately after launching, and the other one that just closed and we announced earlier this month, on May the 4th. May the 4th be with you, guys. I can say that because my name's Obi. But, and so bringing the total amount we raised to 21.21 million. Thank you. Now, but a lot of people get confused, the difference between Fedimint and Fedi. Fedi is 2 things. One is a company that exists to accelerate the adoption of Bitcoin, Lightning, and Fedimint, and all of the things built on top of Fedimint or on top of Lightning, so that we can bring Bitcoin to billions of people around the world where they need it the most, in communities, companies, organizations, wherever they may be. But it's also a technology. Actually, it's also a technology. We believe that this technology is going to be the first example. It's not there today. It's not there today. But it's going to be the first example of what we call a federated operating system, a federated OS. Now, what is a federated OS? Well, in a sentence, it's a technology that lets individuals collaborate through Fedimint federations to take control of their money, their data, and their digital lives, while still maintaining the protection of every member's privacy, and even enhancing it, and their autonomy. Now, what does that mean? It means that this technology allows you to have, as a user, this almost like this control center overview of all the federations that you are a member of. You can independently choose which federations you join, what money, what data, and what aspects of your digital lives you store with and use with each federation, but you have one combined view of all of it in one place. As if, for example, on a Bitcoin wallet, you see multiple accounts, each one has a different federation, but it brings it all together. Now, it's still a very big concept, and it's really difficult to sort of understand what that means, unless you do 2 things. One, you have to understand the power behind Fedi, which is Fedimint and the federations that it makes capable, and makes possible, and what can be done and the extent of the capabilities of Fedimint federations. And 2, you sort of need to see it. And so for that point, I'm going to hand you over to Justin.
Thank you, Obi. So it's great to be here.
I'm going to sit down. Actually, I'll stand.
So last year, I actually missed their talk. I think I was outside trying to sell Matt Odell Bitcoin for $100,000. He didn't take me up on it. But I did actually, I attended PlebFi last year, which was a side event that, around Bitcoin Miami and other conferences. And there I sat down next to an interesting German guy and started asking him some questions, and figured out he was Eric Sirian, who I'd seen from Twitter. And I always liked interacting with him on Twitter. And we started talking. And so I talked to him there. I talked to him outside the open source stage for a few days. I think he tried to explain Taro to me. He failed. I tried to explain Taro to him. He failed. So just we started talking and realized we had some matching skill sets and shared values. And so he told me after the conference he was going to El Salvador to do some work. So I'm like, okay, I'll come too. So we went for a week in El Salvador and built the world's worst mobile app around Fedimint. It could send and receive on chain. It could send Lightning, but couldn't receive.
But that's when I knew that Justin had to be the person that I set this business up with, because he was willing to just jump on a plane and fly to El Salvador and work on it. So
that's one takeaway from the conference. If you meet a crazy German guy with a really wild idea, get on the plane and go to El Salvador with him. But yes, that's kind of where I got started. And then from there, I was like, okay, this thing can't receive Lightning payments. Let's try to make it receive Lightning payments, right? And just went off from there. And so yeah, it was a really life-changing experience last year at this conference, and it's great to be back. So I'm here to describe Fedimint modules, and basically how do Fedimint federations work? How do they do things? Where does the functionality come from? I'm sort of approaching it if you don't know anything, right? Like it's just like where the basic questions, like how does it do a Bitcoin payment? How does it do a Lightning payment? So basically, let's start even further. What is a federation? It's pretty simple. A group of second-party custodians managing a threshold multi-sig Bitcoin wallet and running a distributed consensus protocol. So it's, in one word, it's a multi-sig, right? It's a wallet, Bitcoin wallet, can hold Bitcoin, but it's controlled by multiple people, right? And you can have a multi-sig and do things with the Bitcoin, but it requires interaction, right? Like you'd have to get together and sign a PSBT, and it's kind of a pain. So the idea is to write down some rules in code, a protocol, consensus protocol, and run that alongside the on-chain Bitcoin wallet that can enforce these rules automatically, right? So you can have like this smart kind of Bitcoin wallet that can do things while no one's looking at, like interacting with it, right? It can just sort of enforce its rules on its own. And so this is what it looks like to set up a federation. So you see on the left side, this is somebody who's going to create a federation. They choose a couple things like the name of the federation and what they're going to call themselves, a couple little details like what the Bitcoin node to use is. And on the right side, there's a bunch of people who are invited to it, right? So they get a little invite link. Each person has to run a server. That's the one thing. You have to run Fedimint D, a daemon, and it just pops up the setup UI, right? So the people that are invited paste a little invite link, and now they're sort of in, and they see the proposed rules of the federation, right? Like maybe how many blocks does it take to accept a deposit, right? Like that could be one rule that they would accept, and then everyone gets a little piece of data at the end. Once the configuration for the federation has been generated, like let's say the keys in the Bitcoin wallet, right? And these are generated in a way that everyone generates their own private data and just shares public data, so nobody controls it. They just share this little string back and forth on a secure messaging channel like Signal or something, and authenticate each other so that they know the real-world identity of the person they're interacting with is who's actually on the other side of the federation setup. Hit run, and now you have a running federation that can custody Bitcoin and interact with Lightning, and so forth. So it's pretty simple, and this is a UI that didn't exist 3 weeks ago. So things are going very quickly, and we're really looking forward to like more contributors here. This is really a great place to jump in and contribute if you're a front-end developer. We haven't had a lot of room for front-end developers so far, but now you can contribute there.
But even in the previous version of this UI, which was not as simple as this one, the setup time, if you've already downloaded Fedimint D and Bitcoin D, is minutes.
A minute? Yeah, if everyone's online.
It's 1 or 2 minutes, and you've got a federation. And then you just need to keep it fed and watered with internet and electricity. It's like a Bitcoin node.
Cool. So now it begs the question, like, how do you get an on-chain wallet? How do you get connected to the Lightning Network? How do you extend it further to do other things? And so that's going to introduce the idea of a module. We call this a module, right? So kind of in the beginning, Eric built a couple different features, and just sort of to make the code cleaner, he separated them out. And eventually we realized, hey, some of these abstractions to be able to separate out the functionality could be used to build new features, right? And so that's what a module is. It just adds functionality to your federation. And it does this by adding new transaction types and consensus rules. So that's kind of a cool thing about this is the difference between Fedimint and Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin's consensus rules are it's a global thing, right? Its consensus rules they shouldn't change very often. They should be very, very difficult to change. But with Fedimint, you can run them locally in communities, and you can experiment. And I think this will be really interesting to see like what actually works in the wild, right?
Through permissionless innovation.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm going to jump into like a little technical things, because I know some of the people on the open source stage are programmers. But even if you're not, I think this should be understandable, right? So this is like the core abstraction in Fedimint. It's a transaction system, so it has a transaction. And this should be very familiar if you've looked into Bitcoin, right? There's inputs to a Bitcoin transaction, outputs, and signatures. One difference is, since it's a new thing, we get to adopt new technologies like Schnorr, and we can use cross-input signature aggregation, right? So that's one small difference between Fedimint and Bitcoin. This is something we'd like to add to Bitcoin in the future, but maybe Fedimint can be a little test ground to see how this works. But inputs and outputs, right? Inputs are money going into a transaction. Outputs are the money that's created by a transaction, right? And so with Bitcoin, these are they don't change very often, right? They change with Taproot. They change with different types of inputs and outputs come with every one of these soft forks, but they don't change very often. The cool thing about Fedimint is that by writing a module, you can add new inputs and new outputs. And the really amazing thing is that it all interoperates at this low-level abstraction, right? So if you have a few modules and you add a new one, you can create transactions that spend from an old module and spend into a new module. So what does this look like in practice, right? That's kind of an academic interlude there. I apologize if it bored you. Let's look for some concrete examples, right? And so I'm going to go through, on the left side, kind of what it looks like in some Fedimint code, and on the right side, I'm going to explain what it looks like in the Fedi app. So this is Bitcoin multisig, right? What is the core thing a federation has? It has to custody Bitcoin, right? And so we have, on the left side here, there's a little code. This is what you do to build a custom version of Fedimint D, the daemon of Fedimint, and with arbitrary modules, right? So we import this Fedimint. We have a main function, like many programming languages do, and then we build a new Fedimint D and attach a module to it. The Bitcoin module is an on-chain multisig wallet, pay-to-witness script hash multisig wallet, and eventually it could become a taproot multisig wallet. That would be really great. It's another area for contribution if you're interested. And so what does this allow you to do? It allows you to generate an address, and it allows you to send Bitcoin to someone else's address, right? Pretty straightforward. But that's how the base functionality is. That's how like the first feature in a federation is created. That's how the on-chain multisig works. And then on top of that federated custody, right, this sort of more trust-minimized version of second-party custody, we can build other things by adding new consensus rules to the federation, right? So one of the really interesting ones is Lightning, right? So you can, at a very high level, it works by this Lightning module adds contracts to the federation that will escrow Bitcoin until some Lightning node proves that they paid some invoice, right? So it's relatively simple, and but this allows any Lightning node to come and serve the federation. The Lightning node has to trust the federation, but the users of the federation and the federation itself do not have to trust the Lightning node, and so it could potentially lead to kind of a nice market where economic actors who are good at running Lightning nodes can just plug into any federation that they like and make Lightning payments on behalf of the federation. On the right side, you can see in the Fedi app, you can use your wallet to log into Stacker News, upvote something, and this is enabled with WebLN, which is like a really amazing technology that I think more Bitcoiners should support. It really makes for nice user experiences. And so at this point we have on-chain Bitcoin and Lightning, right? And so it's a neat feature that you have one balance, but you can spend in two ways. This is something that basically every Lightning wallet would like to have, and many have, they have different ways of achieving it. And so with Fedimint, you get that, and the question is how, right? How can you be able to pay in two different ways and have one balance, right? And so the answer is when you have a balance in Fedimint, you have these little IOUs that are called eCash, right? So it's an IOU that is blinded, right? So when the IOU is issued by the federation and when you come back to redeem it, the federation cannot correlate the two. And so it's like a client-side IOU, like the user holds IOUs that are very, very private. And so you can see on the left side, this is, you add the eCash module, and on the right side, it allows you to produce some of these IOUs, it's just a little string of data, and encode it as a animated QR code, right? So you can generate one of these animated QR codes, someone else can scan it, and the IOU is sent directly, via the camera to the recipient, and the recipient just reissues it, right? Because now you have two people with the same IOU. That's not a safe position to be in. So the recipient will go and reissue it to the federation, saying like, hey, I'd like a new IOU for the same amount. Here's a good one. And once that happens, then no longer double spends are no longer possible because only one person has that IOU anymore, and the previous one is now spent. Another cool thing is you can just encode these things and send it in a chat. So this is how it works in the Fedi app. You can just send these eCash tokens back and forth in the chat, and that's really neat. We had kind of an interesting realization the other day while we were doing some maintenance on the Lightning node. The Lightning node is down, but we could still send in the chat, which is kind of neat.
Money.
Yeah, exactly. Just instant message money. It's a fun thing, and I think a lot more will happen here. So those are the three default modules in Fedimint. And I'm going to speed up a little bit here because I want you to understand the basics. So those are the default modules that are built into Fedimint by default. But you can extend it by just defining a new module, defining new transaction rules and consensus rules. So one example is social recovery, right? So we have a feature in Fedi that will basically encrypt a secret, give one piece of it to each of the people that are running the federation, and you give them a proof of identity, and later on, if you lose access, you can come back, present that proof of identity back to them, and they will be able to give you access again. Another great one is stability pools. This was created in a hackathon we sponsored a couple months ago. And Epoch VC, a couple others. And so an anonymous team just built this stability pool, and it's a way to basically lock Bitcoin to a fiat value, like a dollar value or another fiat currency. And it uses oracles. All it needs is a price oracle. So I think they might use a BitMEX price oracle, but it just needs a oracle for the price of Bitcoin at a given time, and then it produces contracts that can lock your Bitcoin in at a certain price.
Bitcoin-backed stablecoin, or Bitcoin-backed Tesla stock, or any capital asset.
Exactly.
But Bitcoin in the back end, not a bank in the back end.
And it was really interesting. This was built in a week. So this is very impressive, and really look forward to see how this one evolves. But this is what we've built so far. This is what exists now. And what I want to encourage you guys to do is to get involved in the Discord community, chat.discord.com, I think it's .com, or no, chat.fedimint.org, sorry. Jump in, start talking with developers, get on our GitHub and look around, because there's a lot of other ideas, right? Like you could have a module on Nostr that could, do a consensus system on assigning a message, that every Guardian has to approve into, and maybe that could have some interesting integrations with Nostr. Another really cool one is adopting the Simplicity smart contracting language that's been built by Blockstream. This one would be really interesting just to enable more kind of smart contracts and contracts in the Federation. Actually, if you wanted to, you could probably re-implement. If you implemented Simplicity, you could probably replace the entire Lightning module with it, because it's expressive enough to do everything that the Lightning module does. Another great one is Pooliment, the idea of a distributed mining pool. So instead of having one custodian custodying the money, you could have a federation. Space chains are another one, which I don't really understand, so I won't talk about that one. DLC Oracle is like the idea of a module that can enforce any sort of Oracle-based contract. So the stability pools would be like a special case of this broader idea. Lloyd Fournier has a really great talk on YouTube about this that I'd encourage you to check out. And another one is Zcash, right? If you don't like eCash, Zcash is something with more aggressive cryptographic assumptions, but there's some other benefits. And it would be great if you could choose, hey, do I want eCash? Do I want Zcash? Which way do I want to? Where should the privacy come from? You could build a module to do data storage. You could have a module that can get access to AI models, or you could just throw out the whole privacy in general and just have user accounts. And you can build your own module. Just come and give us your ideas. We'll help you build it, and love to get everyone involved and see what you come up with. And so this is just a little more overview of the last year, right? So a year ago, there was one contributor, Eric. Then Kipman showed up. Mr. Cool Guy, Manmeet, Justin, DeepC, Jodam, more and more and more and more. And so I hope you're next. With that, really happy to talk with you guys. A lot has changed since last year, and I look forward to seeing where we're at next year.
There's one more thing. So, as we said, really it was hard to understand what Fedi was without seeing the power behind it, which was Fedimint, which is, you've now seen the things that you can do with it, and you can now have access to, in Fedi, and you can see that as well from the screens, to multiple federations, which you as a user decide independently which ones you join, and you decide what money, what data, and what aspects of your digital lives you use with which federation. Now, even better than seeing it and understanding what's behind it is being able to use it. And so, today, we are announcing Fedi Alpha. Now, Fedi Alpha is not a federated OS yet, but it's our first glimpse towards what a federated OS can be. And it's focused for builders. I'm sure enthusiasts will download it as well, but we want builders to take it, to build on top of it, and also it comes with existing documentation to explain how to set up federations, how to build Fedimint modules, how to download the app. We thought this would happen, so now what I say now doesn't matter. Just go for it. So this is the easy bit now. But so we've tried to make it very simple and easy, and we will just make it easier and easier. Because what we want is people, first, you download the app. And if you go there, you'll see a site which you can download on Android. You can download it as an APK, or you can download it on iPhone as well, as test flight, or you can download it as a progressive web app. Next thing you need to do is join a federation. So we've created a federation. Now this federation is running on Signet, not on Mainnet. It was designed for builders, but it allows you to see and get an idea before you've set up your own federation of what you can do and how it works, so you can immediately go. Signing up to a Fedimint federation is a matter of scanning a QR code. You don't need to know your email or your password. It takes seconds. And from that app, you can also share it with other people. You can, once you're joined, you can click a button and you have that same QR code, and someone else can download the app and they can join in seconds. But what we want you to do is look at what you can do to build Fedimint modules, make it easy to integrate LSPs or other services to Fedi and Fedimint, to also build Lightning and WebLN-enabled websites, which integrate, as you can see, seamlessly with Fedi, but they also integrate with all the other Lightning-enabled wallets out there. Because a big part of our ethos, and it was talked about before, is to win by ensuring the entire Bitcoin and Lightning ecosystem wins. And the other thing we want you to do is to try and break it. And I'm sure you're going to break it multiple times. But the reason why we want you guys to do that is because we aim to roll this out to people around the world who need it the most, hopefully nearer the end of the year. And hopefully, by you doing that, we find the bugs and issues and resolve them so it's ready for people who need it the most, wherever they are. So that's it. We're around. We are really excited to hear your comments and everything you have to say. So the key is we win by ensuring the entire Bitcoin ecosystem wins, and we all win by doing that. And in so doing, the individuals, the communities, and companies that we support and we care about so much also win. And what we believe is that Fedimint and Fedi is one of the most fundamental human technologies, and it combines that, and that is community, with empowering, with freedom technologies like Bitcoin, like Lightning, like Fedimint, like all of the Fedimint modules and Lightning-enabled and WebLN-enabled websites that you are going to build, and it brings them together to level up humanity. And we hope that you can join us so that we can all level up humanity together. Thank you.
Thank you, Miami, for the last 3 years in this amazing city. The whole world shut down, but Miami welcomed us with open arms. We want to show Bitcoin to the whole world. We are taking the conference on the road to set the stage for Bitcoin in a new city. Nashville. Bitcoin 2024 is coming to Nashville in Tennessee, a city that is known as a music and freedom city. Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville from July 25th to 27th.